Scale, exit, repeat.
Forces you cannot control, but the choices you can. That's what we're talking about today with our host, Michael Gilmour from Australia. I'm going to start off the room here by just playing a little bit of the Startup Club monthly newsletter and the LLM, the notebook LLM from it. Let's play that for a couple of minutes as the room fills in.
And we have a phenomenal roadmap to unpack that today. We are pulling directly from the May 07, 2026 issue of the monthly Startup Club Edge newsletter.
Which is packed with some incredible insights as well.
It really is. But our mission for this deep dive goes way beyond the usual hustle culture advice. We're bypassing the whole wake up at 4 a.m. and crush it platitudes to examine the actual hidden mechanics of leverage.
Because that's what it really comes down to, right? Leverage.
So we're going to start microscopic, looking at the literal words you speak. And then from there, we'll dive into the biology of your nervous systems to the reality of managing an entirely AI-driven workforce.
Oh, that part is fascinating.
Yeah, the AI stuff is crazy. And finally, we will confront the ultimate psychological test of any career, which is just walking away.
And I think it's really vital to establish right up front that you don't need to be building a massive tech company for this to apply to you.
For sure.
Whether you are managing a corporate division, running a small local business, or honestly just trying to gain more control over your daily workflow, this deep dive is fundamentally about how to gain leverage in life.
Emotional leverage, operational leverage.
Yeah.
And
I just wanted to give everyone a chance just to listen to that for a minute as the room fills in here. We've got the show today, Forces You Can't Control, the Choices You Can. And our host, Michael Gilmour, came up with this topic last week. And Michael, I'll let you kick it off. Thank you for joining us again, all the way down there from Australia.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, Colin. And I'm so excited about the show every single week. There's just so much going on in the world that you really just can't control.
Feels kind of shitty right now, doesn't it?
Oh, it's bad out there. And I think the thing that we can control is our reaction to it. Reactions are the things we can't control. So in other words, you can't control the government changing tax rates. You can't do that. You can't control tariffs. You can't control how a major supplier may suddenly change the deal. You can't control these things, but you can control your reaction.
You can't control it, you're right, but you have to survive it though, right? Like, Paw.com has been hit with massive tariffs, high interest rates, government debt that was expired. And we just been hit with so many external shocks in the last 3 years. It's unbelievable we're still standing, honestly.
That's the thing, is that it's the successful entrepreneurs. They go and say, yeah, rather than complaining about the situation, what we're going to do is do something about it. We're going to change our business. We're going to pivot our business. We're going to alter something else in our business so we can get to the other side. Or they make the really tough decision of, you know what this business has done? I'm going to close it and I'm going to start up something else. And that's a really tough decision to make. Yeah, but forces you can't control, the choices you can. And I'm a firm believer, Colin, that what the superpower of every entrepreneur is the power to be able to make decisions. Is to be able to make decisions and leverage that superpower to the max. In other words, really think about things and then make a decision and then follow through and execute on that decision. Give an example.
That's what I want from you. I want to hear a story. We all want to hear stories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to hear your story, Michael. What's going on? What's going on that's caused you to come up with this topic?
Yeah, what happened is that a couple of weeks ago, the Australian government announced its budget. And it happens each year around this time. And they say some of the things are going to change on their tax and all that sort of stuff. And I'm there looking at the announcements with my wife. We're sitting there watching the TV. I'm absolutely glued to it because typically things really impact us. And they go, okay, the capital gains tax has just changed to 30%. I'm like, what? 30% capital gains tax? That's insane. Next thing they announce is, and by the way, all trust incomes will be taxed at 30%. And if you distribute from your trust to a corporation or something like that, to a company, which is quite common, by the way, for various reasons, then you end up with a tax rate that some people say is around 70-something%. You just think about that, 70-something% for the tax rate. It was insane. I'm looking at this, I'm going, this is completely and absolutely nuts. And it put me into a tailspin. It really did. I thought, and that was only two of a whole stack of things. The whole startup community in Australia ground down to a halt. I had a friend of mine, I was talking to him, and he runs one of the startup communities in Brisbane, another city where I'm in Melbourne. And he invested out of his 401k a small amount of money into a company which has been hugely successful. They haven't had a liquidity event like an exit or anything like that yet, but massively successful. So his shares are worth about $60 million. The government passed a no law, which is we're going to tax unrealized capital gains on 401ks at 10%. So he has to pay $6 million. It was like a $50,000 investment. It's now worth $60 million. Like, it just went ballistic. And he's had no liquidity event. So he's going to come up with $6 million. And he said to me, I have no idea where to get this from because I don't have it. And they're not publicly traded shares or anything like that, so I can't sell them. And I can't bring debt against them. That'd be unbelievably risky. And he's wondering what the heck he's going to do. So taxing unrealized capital gains or taxing you when you don't have the cash to pay it. That's what caused me, Colin, to come up with it.
So I feel like it's a first world problem. I'm going to be a little bit hard on you for a minute because we had a lot of guests on Startup Club who come to us from many different countries, and they talk about we just don't have the opportunities to succeed. We don't have the environment. But as entrepreneurs, we got to find that. And I know your environment's being taken down a little bit here. So it's definitely not as easy for you to make money now. But around the world, globally, there are so many countries that they don't even have the opportunity to do what we do in America or Canada or Australia, England, or those kind of countries as well, right? So we have to be cognizant of that, but I understand where you're coming from here.
Put it this way, I was watching the news one night, was it last year? And with this unrealized capital gains tax, they're originally going to put it on everything. Yeah, not just your 401k. And I looked across at my wife and she looked at me and I said, if this passes, we're instantly bankrupt. And luckily it didn't pass into law. Thank goodness. Yeah. But you say, yeah, you're right. We have tremendous opportunities, but we also have, just like everyone else, we have different issues that we have to wrestle through. And whether it's governmental or, for instance, in my industry, September last year, the major advertising network provided 95% of the revenue to the entire industry exited. One day to the next, one day they're there.
Talking about the big G, right? The big G.
That's
Google.
correct. That's correct. The big Google. One day they're there, the next day they weren't. So 95% of the revenue coming into the industry for my business vanished one day to the next. They just made a corporate decision. They're not going to be in the industry I'm in the domain name monetization industry. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, you've got to make decisions to get yourself through these sort of things. And from my side, to me, that was an eminently predictable situation. And so we planned for 2 years of exactly how we're going to deal with this situation. So with the result, we're now up since September last year, 230% in revenue. Because I think we're one of the few companies that actually planned for this. Yeah. So it's how you react to it.
And let's get into that, Michael. Let's get into that reaction in a minute. Let me share a story too, just provide context. And maybe we're going to be breaking some news here. Hopefully I'm not going to get in trouble. But let me share our story, a relatively recent story. And then we're going to talk about, okay, what can we do? And how do we get through that? And if you're in the audience, you want to come on stage, you want to share a story about how your business was externally hit by external factors, whether it's government, environment, hurricanes, whatever. Oh, geez, I had a hurricane too a couple of years ago, and my main Airbnb's been down for 2 years, but that is not the story I wanted to share. The story is, it's about an e-commerce company, paw.com, and we hit 40 million in sales, really cool. At the time, we needed to grow to be able to handle those sales. But the COVID hit and we took a government loan. The interest rate at the time was 3%. Okay. It was a $3.2 million loan. It was the MSLP loan, Main Street Lending Program. And it actually helped us because we were in the process of getting venture capital, and then the COVID hit and we couldn't get the venture capital. So getting the government backed loan was actually pretty helpful. But something strange happened after being in for a couple of years. The interest rate went from 3% to 9%. And so now you can start add up the numbers there. You're talking about 300,000 of interest a year. We had the post-pandemic hangover. Sales had fallen back. We literally broke even last year. It was a pretty decent year for us. But because we didn't have 2 years of profitability, the bank and the SBA has a rule that you can't get an SBA loan. And then the Main Street Lending Program, which was a 5-year loan program, we paid off 30%. So we got down to 2.4 million. And it came down to the 2 weeks before it was going to expire. They said, we're getting a renewal with the SBA. And they said, we don't qualify. And so all of a sudden, here's a company that owes $2.4 million in 2 weeks. We defaulted on the loan. And then I was able to sell enough assets off personally to be able to cover it. But interest rates have been destroying entrepreneurs and small businesses in America. I don't know what's going on down in Australia, but
it's horrendous.
It is very hard because if you got a lot of money, like these big corporations, it drives me a little bit nuts to see these big billionaires, and Elon Musk to be a trillionaire. I'm not jealous, by the way. I'm very proud of him. But the whole system seems to be stacked around corporations and billionaires, and small businesses are being left behind because the interest rates are so high. How can you make money unless you can borrow? You need to borrow when you're starting out, when you're doing a startup. In order to become successful, you need to borrow and you need to pay interest. But the interest rates are so high right now, money's so hard to come by. It's very hard on that first-time entrepreneur. It's easier for me and you, quite frankly, because we've been around the block a few times and we have some resources to cover this kind of stuff. But it really did hurt paw.com. We had to lay off most of the staff. We had to do a liquidation sale. We had to liquidate inventory. It was a really difficult struggle. And when you are facing these cliffs, you got to deal with them. And deal with them meant that we had to shrink the company. A lot of people lost their jobs, probably dozens of people, quite frankly, maybe even as much as 100 people lost their job because of the way that we were hit with this government loan issue. And you got to face it head on, acknowledge it. So I've been a little bit embarrassed about the whole paw.com. I never founded the company. I never started it. I just invested in it and became the largest shareholder. Today, I own almost all of it. When we were hit with a couple of things, we were hit with that, but high interest rates, and then we were hit $300,000 a year in interest. And then we were hit with the tariffs. The tariffs really knocked us down a little bit. The fact of the matter is textiles. It's a textile company. We do dog beds, dog blankets, some of the best in the world, by the way. It's pretty amazing stuff. Even a new outdoor dog bed. We just had a successful Kickstarter. But when the tariffs hit, it hurt our business a lot. And all those government policies, a war breaks out in Iran, and now we're paying more interest rates. Do you see what I'm saying? It's those external factors. So how do you survive? And the only way I'm going to answer the question, but I think my only way I can here, Michael, is that we just had to become more and more efficient. We're now actually leaning heavily on AI agents. We literally hired 19 AI agents, not employees, AI agents, to do functions that were being done by offshore labor or even onshore labor. And you just got to become ruthlessly efficient to survive in a dark winter. And then the idea is that when the winter will thaw, the winter will end, interest rates will come down, and you'll be very well positioned to win in the market going forward. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, the thing I always think about is this. is as an entrepreneur, you got to really determine what you can control and what you can't control. And some things you can't control, as we're discussing right now, but there's some things you can control. And one of the things you touched on right there, Colin, is become ruthlessly efficient. There's always fat in any business. And I know you absolutely need to have that particular person or that particular item or whatever it is, sell it, lay them off, whatever it is. And sometimes you
And it
just
sounds
have to
ruthless.
do
What you're
that.
saying is ruthless because these are human beings we're talking. These are real people who are losing their jobs,
Yeah.
but it's not. But if the mothership can't survive, then everybody loses their job. Everything goes down. And even the severance payment, like I'm paying someone right now 5 months severance, which is unheard of, by the way.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that right now on one of the companies, and she just had a baby, and it's horrible. But I got no choice. We got to do what we have to do.
Yeah, sometimes you have to make those decisions for the company. And trust me, my view is when you're messing with people's lives, you've really got to think it through. One thing to go along and not buy a piece of equipment or sell it and sell an asset or whatever to become more and more focused and efficient. That's great. So dealing with people's lives, you've really got to think that one through. When I first took over, I bought my business partner out. And prior to that, this is back in end of 2023. And it was 2 days before Christmas. Finally, the documents got signed and all that sort of stuff. And the first round where I effectively had control of the company then. And up until that point, I'd made a whole series of decisions what I was going to do. And one of them was I was going to lay off my COO and 2 particular developers straight away. The 2 developers were relatively new, so they were still in their trial period and that sort of stuff. And I laid the 3 of them off within 2 minutes of getting control of the company and 2 days before Christmas. And people looked at me and said, "You are just such a ruthless person." What they didn't hear was I doubled all their severances. It was just...
I think what you're doing there is you're saying, okay, we have to make change, but how do we make it smooth for the employee? But what you're doing is, I think you're doing the right thing. I've always had that philosophy as well.
You got to remember, these are people. They're not machines. They're not cogs in a great big machine.
And their families too, Michael. They have families to feed, and they've got kids.
One of them called me up and said, "I've just had a new baby," and all this sort of stuff. What am I going to do? And what I wanted to say was, you should have thought about that before you sat on your ass rather than actually worked really hard.
Okay, slow down here. You had me a minute ago. Michael, you had me a minute ago by being nice. Now you're slamming him. What's going on here?
No, I said that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
But you don't say that.
As you're saying, that particular person you're talking about wasn't actually just a layoff, it was really a firing.
Yeah, I didn't. They're still in the trial period. So I just said, no, we're not going to proceed, continue on. But it's a difficult thing, though, even that in that situation. You just have to make some tough decisions at times. And because I looked at the whole company and it was in a tough situation. It really was in a tough situation. We have a saying in Australia that I got a hospital pass. It's Australian football saying. And a hospital pass is someone passed you the ball just as 10 guys dove on top of you. So you could end up in hospital. And that's what it felt like. And so my recommendation always to entrepreneurs is make decisions and make them really fast. And if you're going to rip the Band-Aid off, rip it off fast. Don't pull it back slowly, just rip it off. And that's what you need to do. And so
I remember also 5 days after 9/11, we laid off 39 people in our company. And I'm like, people are like, how could you possibly do that? Because the company was going bankrupt. We were losing $485,000 a month. And if we didn't make changes, and the plans were actually in place before 9/11 hit, but you know what? We had no choice because at that point, the sales stopped. We had no sales, B2B sales. By the way, that company went on to grow to 600 employees, become a successful IPO, and sold to a Fortune 500 company, and lots of millionaires were created from it. So there's the future effect too of making that hard decision. But was it? No, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was, because in some places they may have place themselves in better companies for themselves or for how they were positioned. But you're right.
I think the thing is, you do it as humanely as possible in the situation of laying people off. And you do whatever you can to help them out, right? This is different when you're getting rid of someone without cause. We're getting someone with cause. In other words, they've done something wrong. It's easy. Those are easy decisions. You're just like, you're gone. If they've broken one of the values of the company or something like that. But when you're laying someone off without cause, in other words, you just have to lay it off. You're actually doing it for the sake of all the others who remain. That's why you're doing it. You're doing it for the sake of all the others who remain. And you need to communicate that to those that remain. You say, look, there's going to be no more layoffs. That's one of the things I say to the team after I took over the company. I said, there's going to be no more layoffs and you're my team. And we're moving forward. And we're going to be doing this together and we're going to grow this company. And so you set them at ease, and I explained to them, and also they gave them opportunity to ask any questions. I said, I won't answer anything about specific individuals, but I will answer questions about the generality of the decision. And that's one of the things that I ended up doing. All of those people who are the core of my company are still with me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's important too. And
oh, yeah.
Let me read you something. You made me think of this because a very good close person to me just went into rehab. And by the way, that's another thing, right? You got adult care eventually. As we start aging, we get adult care, child care. You have brothers or whatever who you need to take care of now. It's like life really does serve you outside of your business, and you gotta. But here's the thing is, and this is where I've made a bit of a mistake in my own personal life, is you got to make certain your core company is continuing to make money, and you can't drain it to help others to the point where it kills the goose that lays the golden egg. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Yeah.
Courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Okay, let me repeat that. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I just think that is such a beautiful prayer. It's just a beautiful piece of connection of words because it really says to someone, I cannot change interest rates. I cannot change wars. I cannot change that. But I have to change internally. And I'm looking for the wisdom to know the difference. I think it's brilliant. I just think it's such a brilliant prayer.
Yeah. That's a great prayer. It's a very famous prayer, that one, but it's so true. And in some ways, that's the entrepreneur's prayer.
You'd almost think so. There would be a version for that.
Yeah. So I think the challenge with all of these things is working out what you can change, what you can't. Like the government makes a decision and changes the laws and that sort of stuff. That the thing I always look at is this an opportunity or is this a threat? Because sometimes it becomes really tough, but any competitors in your industry may not be able to have the resources or may not be able to have the gumption to be able to change and adapt quickly. So if you can change and adapt quickly, first of all, as an entrepreneur, then lead your company to be able to change and adapt quickly to those circumstances, then that's a competitive advantage. And so whenever I see something like the government changing the rules, I can't impact government. I really can't. I got no control over government. I got no control over interest rates and stuff like that. But what I can do is make decisions in my company to adapt quickly. And that's the thing I always end up looking at, Colin, is how can I react? And as I react, I then look at what's happening to my competitors and to see whether they're reacting as quickly. And 9 times out of 10, they don't. They don't react nearly as quickly. And the issue.
Let me ask you a question, Michael. So how long do you go for this? I mentioned a dark winter, right? Like e-commerce is in a dark winter right now. High interest rates. Oh my gosh, it's unconscionable. We should do a show on this one, but the interest rates quotes that we got for inventory loans are from 40 to 50% from almost every vendor. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? We're talking Shopify. We're talking PayPal's been the only one that's actually been really good for us. But anyway, I don't want to get into it, right? We know we're dealing with a difficult environment and whatnot, but how long do you go? Like, how long do you keep funding it for? How long? Because right now we're not profitable. We're starting to get close to break even. We're getting pretty close, but how long do you keep it going for before you say, I'm done? The government just took me down and that's it.
Yep. I think that a few things is the thing I look at is I look at the hard, cold numbers and I do my best to remove my ego from the equation. And that's sometimes really hard, my ego and my emotions from the equation. That's sometimes really hard because when you're looking at, say, closing a venture or something like that, and I've had to do this in the past, when you look at closing a venture, you feel like it's going to be a personal slight. In other words, you have failed. You have personally failed. And you as an entrepreneur can't possibly fail because what people are going to say about you. No, you haven't failed. You made a business decision. That's the first realization. You made a business decision so that you can succeed next time. What a lot of entrepreneurs end up doing is they delay the decision so long that they chew through all their assets, they lose their house, they max out their credit cards, and then they don't just put the company into bankruptcy, they personally go bankrupt. And that's a different scenario. And they say, oh, if I just hang on long enough, because I read these stories about the person that managed to survive and they finally got that great big deal. And I see these entrepreneurs all the time, Colin.
To know when to hold and know when to fold them, right? I think you really do have to set a stage gate. And I talk about that in the book, Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. And stage gate for even within I usually talk about it in context of startups, but I actually feel like in the context of even your existing company, if you don't hit it, you need to pivot or kill it. And we'll do the best we can with our businesses here. But I do believe that is the case. You need to pivot or kill it. And I know we got GBM on stage here.
So good to have you up here. That's for sure. GBM, I'd love to get your thoughts on this topic. And over to you.
Okay, so what's the topic? Focus you can't control, the choices you can. Forces you can't control, the choices you can. So break that down to me. What is that?
Yeah, it's really all about, like, in life, you can be the best freaking entrepreneur in the world. But if all of a sudden the interest rates spike up and you got to pay 10, 12, 40% interest because that's the way the market goes, you're at the mercy of external factors. So you can't change those, but what can you do in the face of high interest rates or high tariffs or a war in Iran or whatever it is? What can you do to survive?
What you can do is, I guess if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in business, you're definitely watching the market. You're definitely watching the news. You're definitely watching what's going on around the world. If you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, if a war goes on in a different country, it definitely knocks down your profits. It definitely knocks down.
Well, it seems to be the case with Iran, right? The interest rates have been going up. We have almost a multi-year high on interest rates. We have oil prices, gas prices.
Iran had a lot of control. So when they took a lot of things, fucked not only Americans up, but a lot of other countries up. You know what I mean? So that's a whole other conversation. But what you could do to avoid that collapse is be structured, have strategy. When you build a business, when you're an entrepreneur, the news is there. You see the economy is good. Everybody could tell when the economy is about to crash. You just got to be structured and strategize. Okay, I'm going to grind. Say if it's a year before, you know, all this shit's about to start up. It's a risk that you're going to grind your ass off for that 1 year and probably do it for nothing because the war never happened. But what if the war does happen? It's structured.
Bring up a good point about preparing. We don't often, as entrepreneurs, we are so optimistic that we push everything to the edge and the limit and everything like that. And then something goes wrong and we fall apart, right? But I like your point about if you prepare for it and you pad your bank account just a little bit to handle these kind of shocks, That's actually not a bad strategy. I think that's probably one of the best ideas we might have had so far on the show, Michael.
It's not about padding your bank.
I mean, it's the wrong word, but if you
have it
prepare
wrong.
for it,
It's about, you're an entrepreneur. What are you doing as an entrepreneur? You're selling. You're dealing with clientele, a lot of clientele. Build your clientele in that year. So when this stuff does collapse, you're one of the most famous people in your zip code. And you know what I mean by zip code? In your area. Everybody's going to call you, because what happens during economy collapse? People still have a little bit of money to do the most important things, but they want to go to the cheapest people. They want to go to the most reliable people, the most trustful people they know. You got to build that. You have to be strategized. You have to be very on point. As entrepreneurs, people forget. You get very caught up in chasing. And as an entrepreneur, you got to realize, like, there is collapse. There's a lot of collapse. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs do not, even though if you collapse 5 fucking times, entrepreneurs will still be like, I'm going to chase because I'm not going to collapse. And then they collapse, and then they chase. And then I'm pretty sure every entrepreneur had at least 1 or 2 months where they were completely down multiple times. But why? Because the mentality we have is chase, sell, clientele. There's a lot of money into it. When a lot of money is into it, what happens? You get lost. And it's just like, we have to strategize for times like this, because there's a lot of other entrepreneurs right now that are doing more than amazing because the economy is low. How? And that's the question that you guys are asking. How? They just built a structure. They built a business. And when you build a business, you be aware of collapse, of investments, of a whole bunch of other shit. That's what I'm trying to point at. You have to be structured. You have to build clientele. You have to keep clientele and be the most trustful person towards your clientele. Build relationships. If you know this shit's going to happen in a year, build the most best relationships to your clientele that you can possible. So when this shit happens, you're the first person they think of to call. Yeah, they think you're expensive, but you have a good relationship with them. So they might want 5% off. That's lame. Drop the 5%, but they ain't going to go to somebody that's 50% off because they trust you. They have that relationship. And that's what it is structuring. Yeah, you're an entrepreneur, but you're also a businessman. You got to mix them together and structuralize it so when shit collapse, you're good.
One of the things we can do that when there's an external impact is, yes, we can work on our business and we can make a whole series of decisions. But also as an entrepreneur, we need to get our head out of our business. And we need to realize that our clients are going through probably very similar problems, that our suppliers are going through very similar problems. And to go and visit your suppliers or to visit your clients and sit down with them and say, how can we help you out? Let me tell you, you help a person out when their house is burning, when their house is on fire, and you go in there and say, hey, let me get in pitch in and do what I can to help out. Even if it's a small amount, they'll remember that forever. And you'll have a long-term client, long-term trusting relationship and everything like that. And it could be your house is about to combust as well in terms of the metaphorical business house. But the thing is, get your head out of your business at times. You need to spend a portion of your time just contacting your suppliers, contacting your customers. One of the things we've done, and I'm from Australia, so you need to appreciate this, is that we go and visit customers. The number of our competitors who never visit the customer is unbelievable. Most of them don't put a person on the road and actually go out, do the hard yards and go and visit their customers. Some of those people, no business gets done because they're an opportunity in the first meeting, but maybe on the third meeting. But we go and visit them and you break bread and you have dinner with them or whatever it is. And I'm coming from Melbourne, Australia. Just to get to Los Angeles is a 15-hour flight. Just to get to Los Angeles. Just think about that. I've already been to the United States technically 4 times this year because I went through the US to Europe and back to the US. technically 4 times this year. Yeah, because I'm a firm believer that one of the things you need to do is really get alongside your clients and really get alongside suppliers and partners. Meet with them. Ask them, how are they handling different situations in the industry? What can you do to help? Where are the opportunities? And when you do that, they'll remember it forever. We've got some clients we've had for 15 years.
What's the name of that movie, this Christmas movie, and that everybody in the town comes together and helps them out at the end?
The Cranks.
No.
It's a Wonderful Life. That's with Jimmy Stewart.
Amen. Maybe you know that one. But I feel like
What do you
what you are
mean?
saying is relationships can last through hard times as well. And share your
Relationships get you
problems
through
with
them.
share your problems with your suppliers and your customers, and they'll
Yep.
often help you out. And by the way, we had a situation 3 weeks ago, in my incubator where I wasn't collecting enough rent, and basically I was going to shut it down. And literally, everybody got together and said, we're raising our rent. It was just a miracle. It was amazing. And it was just so fun to see the whole community come
That's
together.
amazing.
And I don't make a profit on the incubator, just so you know. But everybody came together and raised their own rents on their own so that we could all stay together. It was really nice.
Hey, Michael, I don't want to say you're not going to be successful. With the mindset you have, you're already successful. And the fact that you go out to your clients, man, you know
Yeah.
what you just said, that I think it's 98% of people do not. That's very good. It's very good that you said that because, like I said, 98% of people don't even think about that shit. They're so stuck in business. Oh, I work so hard today, I'm done. And I won't drop that 5%. You know what I mean? And it's just, you got to do it. Relationships is what kills the industry.
No, absolutely. The business is about relationships. Love to get your thoughts on this. But business is all about relationships. And it's not what you can get out of the relationships, it's what you can contribute to the relationship. How can you add to the relationship? And I'd like to say that, sure, I've got people I do business with all over the world. And it's almost like if drop me any city in the world and I could pick up the phone and have lunch with someone. It's almost like that. I don't want to push it. There's some places maybe I won't. But at the same time, you drop me in that city and I'm not doing business with that person, but I know them and I view them as a friend that one day I may do business with. But the focus needs to be on the relationship. To me, if the focus is on just doing the business all the time, then you're doing a transaction. You're not building a relationship. You've got to go out of your way to build relationships. And an example, when I attend conferences, on the last night of the conference, I have this sort of rule where I get together a whole bunch of people. I said, here's the rule: no business. That's the rule. No business. If you want to do business, step out of the room or whatever, and that's fine. But no business. And it's about relationship. In fact, building those relationships is just, to me, so important because it helps you get through the crisis. It helps you get through the times when forces come up against your business that you can't control.
And by the way, that happens with suppliers too. Michael.com, we went back and said, look, we're paying these high interest rates. We need some loans from you guys. The manufacturer that we use that brings in the product that we designed, we're getting loans from them to help us. They want to stay in business too, right? So when you share with them and you're open with them and you're vulnerable and you're honest with them, generally they respond pretty well. It's interesting. Like we all think that they're just going to cut us off or whatever, but they don't. The only ones that just really did screw us when things went bad was the big companies, the big tech companies, Google,
Well, it's
Facebook.
like, it's all about structure. Like I keep saying, it's all about structure, right? When you guys get your tax return for everything you spent on all the supplies and all that stuff, what do you guys do with your tax return? Do you reinvest into your supplies? That's the smartest thing you could do. Forget about the crashes. It's built. Once you get that business license, once you get that license in your hand, and you're now claiming tax returns, you're now claiming all this stuff, the interest rates don't matter. Are you going to reinvest what you have invested already into it? And the collapse happens from a lot of people not being structuralized. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm saying like I said, I'm in software engineering. So in this world, a lot of people collapse. A lot of people collapse in business and even entrepreneuring, trying to sell. A lot of people collapse. And it's just like they collapse due to non-structuralization. They have no structure within knowing themselves. And like Michael was saying, like building relationships with their employees. They're so stuck in the business world. But yeah, be stuck in the business world, but always remember there's times to reinvest. And those times you reinvest, if you reinvested last year's tax return into this year, would it affect you really for the collapse?
Yeah, I think you raise a really important point is that, GM, is that having structure in the business allows you to, and processes and things like that, it allows you to get the time to do what's really important, which is build those relationships. But I want to come back down to Damon here. Damon, thank you for being patient there, Damon. Over
Yeah,
to you,
thanks so
Damon.
much. I really appreciate the room. It was great. I've learned a lot. And I appreciated the last person who came up. I like your energy. You have that youth energy. I love that.
That's got to be
just-
GBM. I'll tell you that.
Oh no, man! I'm definitely. I wouldn't say I'm a youth, but I am 24. I am still learning.
you're-
So
you're
good that
very
you
young.
listen.
Yeah, you're a youth compared to us. That's it.
I have pickles in my refrigerator older than you. You're an
I
embryo. with
believe
hair.
it, man. I believe it. But what's good is that we're all learning. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter about age. We all learn, we all evolve, and we all grow.
Over to you, Damon.
Yeah, I wanted to comment because before he came up, you were talking about choices and you were talking about forces. And there's definitely pendulums. We're in one right now. There's a big pendulum going on. But I disagree a little bit about choices. I agree and I disagree simultaneously. I remember a very wise spiritual person told me once, who gave me a piece of advice. He said, Damon, you have choices. They're just not good ones. And this changed my life because I realized it was true. I had a
That
couple
is so true.
choices. They just weren't good. I didn't like the choices. And the problem is reality. The problem was reality. I didn't like the choices. And some of it had to do with forces. Some of it had to do with previous choices. You try to make the best choice you can. Like in business, I've had several businesses, and I had a business once where I did everything right. Everything textbook right. Made millions of dollars, and through no fault of my own, it was taken. Like with some weird legal wrangling and some things like that. This has happened to me. Did I have choices during that period of time? They were not good choices. And I think what happens is when we don't like the choices as entrepreneurs, we have this philosophy of sunk costs. We've put so much into it and we believe that we're going to sometimes change the choices and we're not. Right. And this has happened to me. I had a business that I should have dissolved 3 years before. Everybody walked out. I didn't because I had so much emotionally invested in the business. And I didn't realize that I was the business. All I had to do was change my offer, get a new LLC and move on. But that was a very hard lesson. I just needed to change the offer into a different business and move on. The structure no longer works, right? So that's all I wanted to say is that sometimes we just don't have good choices and we just have to be honest about it. We just don't.
I think you raise a really important point, Damon. It is something, like you said, sometimes your choice is just bad. And I always find as an entrepreneur, choose between a good choice and a bad choice is actually quite easy. But there's all the gray choices in the middle as well. And most of them they're leaning towards the dark side as such. So which of these bad choices will I choose? And it's really tough. And in some circumstances, you're just going to make that decision to close things down or close that product line down or not deal with that customer. Or I had a situation yesterday where I had some of my team who decided they're going to do this particular thing for a client. They hadn't really thought it through. And the result was going to create massive workload right across the entire organization. And I said to them, sometimes the best thing you can say to a client is no. That's the other thing to think about as entrepreneurs. The client is always right. No, they're not. Sometimes you're just going to say, no, we're just not going to do that. This is our experience and why it's far better than what you're suggesting. And you have that conversation, you just prepare to walk, because you end up driving the whole organization the wrong direction. Yeah. And I said to my team, I said, look, congratulations on coming up with this unbelievably unique solution. I wasn't being sarcastic. It was an amazing solution. I said, the thing you haven't thought about is what happens after you make that decision and the ramifications of it. And so I ended up talking it through, and they go, oh. And I said, sometimes you just got to go back to the client and say no. And it's a bit like that with Damon. There's so many times in business, as entrepreneurs, we just want to please the customer or please the supplier or please this other. We desperately want to please people. And sometimes you just got to tell people, give them some tough love as well, which is no. But I love that. Sometimes there's just no good choices. And I agree with you. There have been many times in my business career where I've looked and said, none of these choices are good. And most of them are going to make some people pretty angry or upset. But you just got to choose them. Why? Because you chose to be the entrepreneur. The challenge I find for most entrepreneurs is they choose not to choose. They just hope that something better will come. Hope is not a strategy. Yeah, hope is not a strategy. You have to choose, because that's the job you selected to do. So be a leader and choose. As I say to my team, if you do not make a decision, then you have made a decision. You have decided not to make the decision, with which case you're in a boat and no one's directing the rudder. So I always say to my team, I don't care whether you make a wrong decision or not. I don't care if you make a wrong decision, but make a decision and we'll correct it along the journey. There's very few decisions in business that will destroy the business overnight. Very few. There are some, but very few. And you can always bring correction, but you've got to keep going as well. So in that time, as entrepreneurs, I had a friend of mine, he had a business that went down back in around the 2001, long time ago now. And he went down to the pub and said, oh, Michael should have done this, Michael should have done that. He made such bad decisions. So he founded his own business. And fast forward 10 years, about 2010 or something like that. And I reached out to him, and for whatever reason, and we got together. And he apologized for his attitude. He said, I didn't realize how much gray area there was for an entrepreneur and how quite often all you have is bad decisions to make. So it's been an interesting topic. And we've gone around a whole stack of things. One of the reasons why I like The Complete Entrepreneur is it really begins to unpack, what does it mean to lead the life of an entrepreneur? What does it mean to experience the emotional journey as well in these times? It's very easy at times to say, oh, you just make a decision. No, but there's an emotional toll that occurs, and it can get very wearing along that journey. And for me, for instance, when I'm dealing with people, it really takes an emotional toll if I have to lay people off. I make the decisions, but gee, it's tough. I know that's a weakness I have, and it's probably a good weakness as well, because you're dealing with people's lives. Yeah, but one of the things I find is really good is I have a person, for me, like Colin, and Colin is here, and every entrepreneur needs someone they can go to. I say, see somebody, not anybody. For me, it's Colin. And the other thing is, as entrepreneurs, we need to be committed
for me, it's
to
Michael.
learning. So we ain't going to be committed to learning. And I would highly recommend, for those of you who don't realize this, that on podcasts or in the room right now, Colin wrote a book called Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat. Just go and get the book. It's like the Bible for entrepreneurs. It's got 40 awards. It's been the top sellers on Amazon, all that sort of
Should be
stuff.
number one again this month, apparently. I've been told. Forbes says that we were selected to become by a particular organization that's going to push it to number one again. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. That is great news. Yeah, so I think the thing is, be committed to learning. Go buy Colin's book. buy Colin's book because you're committed to learning. Buy Colin's book because it's a flipping great book. It really is. And from an amazing author. So go out there and do it. And let's face
But I
it,
like your
that's
last
some of the
point, too,
reasons-
Michael, about leaning on people and connecting with others is as part of a strategy. So I feel like we got to find really cool strategies around what you can't change, but yet you can make decisions around. And by the way, we also have in the room here, we have more people in this room right now who are not in the Startup Club on Clubhouse. It's so easy to join the club. You just click the logo at the top and join the club, and you can make a choice. This is a free club. A startup.club is the free website. The book is something that Michael mentioned already. We have all these resources to help you succeed as an entrepreneur. We don't make any money on this, Michael and I. We do this for free, but we love it because we love helping others.
Make sure you come next week, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And I'd love to see you in the room. And don't be a stranger. Come up on stage, share your stories as well. We'd love to hear your stories. I want to thank GBM, who is up here with us. Thank you very much for your input, and also for Damon, who had to exit pretty soon. I'd like to thank all of those people, particularly in the audience, who've been here with us. You guys are absolutely awesome, and really wish you all the best in your business. May you have every success this next week, and see you next week on The Complete Entrepreneur. God bless you.
And I will say, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's great message for entrepreneurs.
That is fabulous. See you later. Bye.